Hey, I'm Josh Goins, founder of the Flyway Federation. I founded Flyway Federation in February of 2018 after going on to the Louisiana Sportsman and seeing young hunters arguing and fighting over issues of the lack of migration, lack of ducks coming to Louisiana. And if you've hunted Louisiana at any point in time throughout history, especially the older gentlemen, you could tell the key years that ducks quit coming to Louisiana. We all saw it. We all witnessed it. We felt the effects from it. Well, I never knew the reason why that the ducks weren't coming to Louisiana anymore. I kept trying to figure it out, and I never could pinpoint an exact thing. There's so many things that affect migration. It's not just one thing. But during my research, I found out that they manipulated the laws through loopholes and the Migratory Bird Treaty reform in 1998. And I knew that someone had to step up and say something. And that's how Flyway Federation was founded. So my research showed that the law changes in 1998 and implementing the AHM and the CES, all this led to the exact years that I was witnessing the lack of migration here in the state of Louisiana. And so I started going around and asking guide services, guides, management, wildlife agents, biologists, to find out if they saw the same thing that I was seeing. I knew something was happening, and these key years tied to all these dates of problems. So I stepped up and brought it public to let people know it's not pressure. Yes, pressure does play a factor, but it's only because we're getting one small migration of ducks, and we hunt those ducks all season. We've lost roughly anywhere between 60 to 80,000 duck stamps in the state of Louisiana. Duck stamps equals duck hunters. So we've lost 80,000 duck hunters in the state of Louisiana. How is it possible to still be hitting these high numbers? How is it possible for pressure to play such a factor? I couldn't understand that. So I knew that wasn't the major issue. So then people talk about mud motors. Well, we've drove mud boats and airboats in the state of Louisiana ever since I started hunting. And looking back to the history, Lutcher Stark right here at the Sabine Wildlife Refuge, I guess he probably had the first mud motor in this area before Warren Coco started making. They ran loud boats with big 350s in them. I knew that wasn't the problem. But people kept on blaming these issues. So then I looked to weather. And do we have wet years and warmer years? Do we have colder years and drier years? Yes. Weather goes in cycles, and it has since the beginning of time. You can look at any of the information and research I will provide to you. It will show you that weather does play a factor, but birds migrate off a photo period. So I knew that wasn't the problem. So I knew that I had to find what the problem was. And we all know that ducks need food, and they need water, and they need shelter. So I looked back to the Canada goose, because the Gulf Coast and on up into Arkansas and into Oklahoma, we wintered the 100% of the Canada goose migration historically. Well, I found that right after World War II, United States Fish and Wildlife Service wanted to give opportunities to northern hunters. So they were utilizing and creating these refuge systems. And I'm not saying refuge systems are bad, by no means, because I'm sitting right here at the historic Sabine Wildlife Refuge. We need these locations and key refuge to provide that habitat for the birds as they come down from the breeding grounds. And I fully agree with that. But what I don't agree with is what they were doing on these refuge systems. They started supplemental feeding, and they would dump grain, and these birds would come in by the thousands. You can read stories about them setting up grandstands and the public coming out to watch these birds come in. Well, by doing this, you then took an area and a habitat for a bird, and you created that to hold them, because historically the birds were migrating off a photo period and going to the southern wintering grounds. They always had. You can read all the way back to whenever people first came up the Mississippi River talking about the skies turning black with ducks and geese. All the information's there for you. You just got to go read it. So that's what I started doing, and I noticed that them wanting to provide hunting opportunities for northern hunters, which I agree with, but not to the extent of stopping the whole migration. Now, from 1952 to 1970, they had stopped the whole Canada goose migration. The whole migration. There was only very few still coming to Louisiana. Matter of fact, Louisiana in 1971 ended the Canada goose season, because in hopes that the few Canadian geese that were still coming down, they were hoping that they would build the population back up, that they would have babies and they would bring their babies here, and eventually we would be able to hunt Canada geese again. Well, guess what, guys? They never came back. The only Canada goose that we hunt here in Louisiana now is a resident Canada. So they fully quit coming. Now, in 1971, in the commission meeting minutes, they talked about this situation. But key thing is they talked about the snow geese and the blues, of how these exact refuge systems that I was speaking of, Swan Lake, the Illinois River Valley, all in this, I guess the new name for it is the Golden Triangle, they were stopping large amounts of snow geese and blue geese. Louisiana was very concerned at this point. They flew a plane up there and found the population that came right here to Cameron Parish. And they were very concerned about losing the natural resource and losing that revenue for his bird watchers. People coming to this exact location to walk through the Sabine Wildlife Refuge and look at birds, and the hunters that came here. And now, I just told you earlier in this video, we've roughly lost 80,000 hunters. How much money is that Louisiana is losing? So, let's think about this. If Louisiana has lost roughly, let's say worst case scenario, 80,000 hunters. Well, let's base it on an average of $2,000 a hunter a year. Now, we all know as duck hunters here in Louisiana and across the country, $2,000 isn't even a dip in the bucket. You can't even get a blind or a lease for that amount. You factor in your boats, your trucks, your breakfast that you're buying your kids to take to the blind, ice chests, camo, shells. You look at all this taxable revenue, Louisiana is losing a ton of money, because $2,000 on 80,000 hunters, $160 million a year. Over a 20-year span, $3.2 billion. Now, if we know that 2,000 is a low number for cost of a hunter a year, think about the real cost of how many billions of dollars Louisiana is losing in taxable revenue. Think about the rice farmers that are affected by the hunter loss. You think that people are just going to go lease those fields to go stare at empty skies for much longer? No, they ain't. You think about the marshland owners. Now let's think about the loss of tourists coming to Louisiana. People who walk this exact trail and sit in this exact chair to look at this beautiful marsh and to look at the scenery and the birds and the wildlife. You think they're coming here just to look at a small bird or an alligator? No, they can come see that anytime at this marsh. One of the main reasons why they come to this marsh right here is to see the migration of waterfowl, to look at them and watch the skies just cloud up like they used to. As whenever I was a child, and even more so before my time, you hear the stories from your grandfather, your great-grandfather, your uncle. They all saw those times. They got to hunt those times. It's unbelievable the history with waterfowl hunting here in Louisiana. We were the leader in it for so long. Now, knowing all this history and everything that's hurting the state, let's talk about what led to the destruction and where we are today. I found that the law was manipulated in 1986. They found a loophole in the treaty, and it was to do with strict liability laws. It happened right after they implemented what is now the Farm Bill. It was the first time ever in the history of the United States that they joined together conservation acts with agricultural acts. Prior to 1985, everything was kept separate. Now, what this was doing, it was actually put into place to help farmers. And I'm all about helping farmers. But what it was doing, that the farmer was going to be putting some of his property into what is now a CRP, WRP, a Conservation Reserve Program, a Wetland Reserve Program. This would allow the farmer to receive conservation funding to help them out on bad years, and it would help the birds out coming down the flyway migrating. This wasn't a bad idea, and it actually helped out a lot. But you got to remember, it's United States tax dollars that was funding these projects. So we were creating habitat to the north of us and providing these birds with a place to rest, but they were still migrating. The farmer was able to hunt his property and look at all these beautiful birds that migrated through. He didn't commercially hunt it, because you got to remember it's funded by United States tax dollars. So they wasn't allowing them to do that. So in 1995, they had finally got through reviewing all the migratory bird treaty, because you got to remember, I just told you that they found a loophole in it in 1986. So in 1995, they got through reviewing it, and they submitted what was now to be the updated regulations, because the migratory bird treaty is very complex and very large, and it was hard for the average hunter to understand it. If you read it, you better have a dictionary with you. So they got these regulations together, put them on a pamphlet to tell hunters what they could do and what they couldn't do. They amended it in with the Adaptive Harvest Management Plan, which is the basis of how we come up with off of the breeding populations as to what we are going to be able to kill here in the wintering grounds. And they base that off of how many hunters you have in your state. That is how you come up with your exact limits on each species of bird. That's a good thing. They also amended what is now the CES, the Cooperative Extension Service. And what they did, they were going to be going out and telling you what was a normal agricultural practice, what a farmer could do with his land, because you got to remember, this all ties straight to helping farmers out and them producing a quality crop on their land, and also offering a refuge or sanctuary area to migratory birds. All of which is a great thing, but having a state agency governing a federally protected bird becomes a big problem, because then people start defining what they think the regulations say and what they think the Migratory Bird Treaty says. Now, the states that knew and were originally waterfowling states, they don't allow you to get away with these practices. You got guys up north now that are able to commercially hunt CRP, WRP, and there is tons of conservation programs. You've got the Mississippi watershed. It just keeps going on, and it's all done with funding out of mine and your pocket. So we're, in the end, helping fund what is hurting the migration from coming to the original wintering grounds. And whenever you give contributions to these organizations over the years, and I've done it. I've been a committee member. I've been a sponsor. I thought that I was doing a great thing in helping waterfowl. And I'm not saying that these people are bad. I'm saying that they are utilizing your contributions not really intentionally to hurt you, but they're taking that and using that to lobby to help the Farm Bill to build more of these habitats, because that's what they do. That's their business. What we need to do is get them to recognize at how bad this is hurting the migration all over the nation. I have people reaching out to me all the way up every flyway. We have to come together and show everyone that it's not all these factors that they think is really hurting. Let the birds go back natural. Let's stop the abuse of these conservation programs. If you're going to do a conservation program, let's do it naturally. Why do it with agricultural crops? It would save the United States taxpayers money, and it would put the birds back into a natural state. Whenever you get the birds back into a natural state, you have more of a natural migration. And that is what we need up and down every flyway. Please follow us on Facebook. Check out our website, flywayfederationusa.com. We have facts and documents on there to support anything that I say. I will never tell you something that I do not have a fact for. So people that are bringing opinions, ask them for their facts. I'm not saying that a magazine article is bad, but you have to look at long trend data to actually know what's going on and what the problem is. And whenever you start looking at my data and facts, you will realize we have a major problem up the flyway. And if we don't step up and fix this now, I promise you, I won't be sitting here, because who's going to pay money to conservation to keep up these marshes down here in Louisiana and all the way up the flyway? Whenever you have taken a natural resource and privatized it and commercialized it, you have then created the one reason that the Migratory Bird Treaty was wrote, which was because of market hunting. If we don't end this now, our grandchildren and their children aren't going to have a natural flyway. You're going to be able to go and pay money at these exact establishments that your taxpaying dollars already built. Let's fix this, guys. That's what we're here to do. We are here to look over our lands for our children, for the future, with our natural resources. So please support us. Check us out. Thank you for watching the video. I appreciate y'all's time, and I will release a video, and we'll put the link in the bottom of the screen here. We'll release it so that you can actually see me talking about these exact same issues that I've been talking about this whole video, to look at the facts, and I will scroll the facts on the screen for you. Again, thank y'all. Support Flyway Federation.